5 years ago, a massive comet wiped out nearly 75% of humanity, but even after all this time, Earth is still far from safe. Fragments of the comet continue to fall without warning. Radiation has turned most of the world into dead land, and rebuilding civilization has become almost impossible. Since then, the survivors have slowly adapted to life underground. To keep everyone alive, John Garrity searches the outside world for supplies. While searching, he comes across another massive crack in the ground with lava flowing beneath it. Another sign that Earth is still far from stable. He continues searching until he reaches the coastline, where he finds several abandoned lifeboats and a military ship. After checking the lifeboats and finding nothing useful, he decides to search the military ship instead. Before going inside, the bunker warns John that a storm is heading his way. However, they estimate he still has enough time to search the ship. Inside, John finds several useful tools. He continues searching until he reaches the ship's bridge. There, he finds the entire crew dead. While searching the bridge, John comes across a small notebook with a pressed flower inside. The sight briefly captures his attention until the bunker suddenly calls him over the radio.
Get out of there now and get back here.
The storm has suddenly changed direction and is heading straight toward him. Realizing he has no time left, John immediately rushes out of the ship. He sprints across the coastline as the wind grows stronger and lightning begins striking around him. With the storm closing in, John does everything he can to reach the bunker. The bunker contacts him again, asking where he is. John replies that he's moving as fast as he can and asks them to open the bunker doors. The doors open just in time. With the storm right behind him, John makes it inside just before they slam shut. The bunker's leaders gather for a meeting to discuss their situation. Some hope they can return to the surface within a year, but it's still too dangerous. Dr. Amina explains that radiation levels have started to drop, but no one knows when the outside world will truly become safe. Because of that, Allison suggests they start considering migration instead of waiting underground. Dr. Amina agrees and shares her latest research. According to her, a massive crater in southern France may be one of the safest places left on Earth. However, Adam quickly points out that reaching it would be nearly impossible. Europe has fallen into war, uprisings, and civil unrest. Just then, a sudden earthquake shakes the entire bunker. The discussion then shifts to another urgent issue. A group of survivors has sent a distress signal, asking the bunker for help. While Allison wants to rescue them, Adam argues that the bunker no longer has enough resources to take in more people. After a vote, the majority agrees to send a rescue team the next day. The following morning, life inside the bunker continues as usual. Some people attend classes while others exercise or play chess to pass the time. Meanwhile, John spends some time with his family. As a belated Valentine's Day gift, he gives Allison the flower he found on the abandoned destroyer. Their conversation soon turns serious when Allison encourages Nathan to tell John a secret he's been hiding. Nathan admits that he secretly went outside the bunker, leaving John both shocked and upset. Nathan explains that he just wanted to see the outside world again after spending 5 years underground, but John refuses to accept his explanation, reminding Nathan how dangerous the surface still is. Feeling guilty, Nathan excuses himself and locks himself in his room. Not long after, the rescue team returns with another group of survivors. They report that many more survivors are still waiting to be rescued. While Allison wants to send another rescue team, Adam argues that the bunker no longer has enough resources to take in more people. As the debate continues, a massive earthquake suddenly shakes the entire bunker. The violent shaking sends massive cracks through the bunker, causing parts of it to collapse. John survives the collapse and immediately rushes to find Allison. After finding Allison, the two of them rush to Nathan's room. They soon find Nathan, and the family quickly reunite. Realizing the bunker is no longer safe, John tells Allison and Nathan to pack only the essentials. He then rushes to another room to grab the breathing mask. After grabbing the breathing mask, John and his family join the other survivors as they begin evacuating the bunker. Another aftershock suddenly hits, causing even more damage throughout the bunker. When they reach the main exit, the tunnel is blocked, leaving people trapped and unable to move. Seeing there's no way through, John leads his family toward the east tunnel instead. Although part of the tunnel has already collapsed, they carefully make their way through the rubble. Just as they're about to make it outside, another aftershock hit. John urges his family to keep moving, and they make it outside just before the tunnel collapses behind them. After escaping the collapsing tunnel, John leads his family toward the beach, where the remaining lifeboats offer their only chance to escape the island. Before they get far, Allison suddenly realizes that Nathan is missing. Moments later, they find him helping Dr. Amina, who has fallen during the earthquake. After helping her back to her feet, they continue moving with the other survivors. When they reach the beach, chaos has already broken out. Hundreds of survivors rush toward the remaining lifeboats, hoping to escape while they still can. Amid the chaos, Adam is suddenly attacked by a desperate survivor trying to steal his breathing mask. As John rushes in to help him, another survivor snatches John's breathing mask from behind, leaving him exposed to the radioactive air. Despite losing his breathing mask, John continues leading his family toward the last lifeboat. As more survivors desperately try to climb aboard, the crew realizes the lifeboat is already full. With no other choice, they seal the hatch and leave the remaining survivors behind. Moments later, Nathan suddenly notices something in the distance. A massive wave is racing toward the island, and the survivors still on the beach immediately run for their lives. John tells everyone to brace as the lifeboat heads straight into the massive wave. Despite the violent impact, they make it through safely. Once the sea finally calms, the survivors begin discussing where they should go next. After considering several options, they decide to head southeast toward England, hoping they'll find safety there. However, their journey is cut short when the lifeboat suddenly runs out of fuel, leaving them stranded in the middle of the ocean. With no way to continue, they have no choice but to let the ocean current carry them wherever it takes them. After drifting across the ocean for several days, the lifeboat suddenly hits the roof of a submerged building. As everyone looks around, they realize they've finally reached Liverpool, England. To their surprise, much of the city is now underwater. They then use the oars to steer the lifeboat toward the nearest road, where they finally set foot on land. Seeing the city abandoned, John tells everyone that their first priority is to find food, water, and a safe place to stay. He also asks if there's a bunker somewhere in Liverpool, but neither Allison nor Adam knows because they've never been in contact with one. Not long after, Nathan notices several people walking in the distance.
Oh, there's people there.
Curious, they decide to follow them, only to discover a large crowd gathered outside a military checkpoint. The soldiers refuse to let anyone enter without a valid clearance badge, leaving hundreds of desperate survivors stranded outside the gate. Adam steps forward and explains that they're survivors from the Greenland bunker, but when the soldiers ask for his badge, he realizes it's gone. Although Allison still has hers, each badge only allows one person to enter. As Adam continues arguing with the soldiers, the crowd begins pushing toward the gate. With the situation quickly spiraling out of control, he is suddenly shot. The gunshot sends the crowd into a panic as people scramble to escape. As another deadly radiation storm closes in, John urges Dr. Amina to leave Adam behind before it's too late. He then stops a passing van and begs the driver to take them to London. The driver demands John's watch in exchange before finally agreeing to take them. As they continue toward London, the driver warns them that the outside world has become a brutal place. People have grown so desperate that they'll kill each other for a scrap of food just to survive. During the journey, Nathan asks Dr. Amina if she truly believes the crater could be safe. Although she admits there's no guarantee, she still believes it may offer humanity one last chance. A short time later, the driver pulls over for a break. While the others rest, John asks him about the journey to southern France. The driver warns that it's even more dangerous and believes Dr. Amina's theory is nothing more than false hope. Just then, the ground suddenly begins to shake as meteor fragments begin falling across the area. Realizing the danger, everyone quickly takes cover behind the trees. However, unwilling to abandon his van, the driver suddenly runs back toward it. Seconds later, a massive meteor fragment crashes into the vehicle, killing him instantly and destroying their only ride. With their only vehicle destroyed, the group has no choice but to continue the rest of the journey on foot. After walking for several hours, they finally arrive at the home of Allison's former colleague, Mackenzie, hoping he'll still be there. John knocks on the door, but as soon as he removes the board covering the window, Mackenzie suddenly aims a shotgun at them. Fortunately, she quickly recognizes John and Allison before inviting them inside. Inside, Mackenzie takes them to a sealed section of the hospital where she has been living. Dr. Amina soon notices several elderly patients still staying there. Mackenzie explains that they suffer from dementia and no longer remember the comet or even their own families. Unable to leave them behind, she chose to stay and care for them. Later that night, Allison hears John coughing and quietly follows him. She soon finds him in the bathroom, where he's trying to hide blood in the sink. At first, John insists it's just a nosebleed, but he eventually admits that the radiation has damaged his lungs and he may only have a few months left to live. Heartbroken by the truth, Allison wants to stay with Mackenzie, hoping their family can spend John's remaining time together in safety. But John refuses. He believes they didn't come this far just to give up. If the crater truly offers a new beginning, he wants Nathan to have the chance to live a better life. The following morning, they say goodbye to Mackenzie and continue their journey. Before leaving, she gives John a pistol, extra supplies, and warns them not to stop for anyone along the way. As they continue towards southern France, Dr. Amina estimates they're only about 2 hours away. Seeing Nathan unusually quiet, John tries to cheer him up by inviting him to play a game. But before anyone can answer, the window beside Dr. Amina suddenly shatters and she's hit by a bullet.
I'm gonna go first.
Okay.
Realizing they're under attack, John immediately stops the car and grabs the pistol Mackenzie gave him. He manages to take down one of the attackers, but when he turns to face the second, he suddenly runs out of bullet. At the last second, Allison shoots the gunman, saving John's life. After the ambush, they bury Dr. Amina. As John says a final prayer, Nathan quietly asks why people pray for the dead. John explains that it's a way to honor those they've lost and say one final goodbye. They soon reach the English Channel, only to discover that the sea has completely dried up. What was once one of Europe's busiest waterways is now nothing but an endless stretch of cracked earth. Although the sight stuns John, it also gives him hope. With the water gone, reaching France may now be easier than they expected. As they continue across the dried seabed, Nathan notices a long line of abandoned vehicles and asks why everyone has suddenly stopped.
What are they all stopped for?
Moments later, they discover that the ground has split apart, leaving a massive chasm blocking their path. With no way around it, the only way forward is to cross a narrow makeshift bridge. Halfway across, powerful winds suddenly slam into them. Despite the powerful gusts, they manage to make it across safely. Just as they reach solid ground, a brief earthquake suddenly shakes the area. Fortunately, it quickly passes. They then begin crossing a second bridge built from ladders. John reminds Nathan to stay focused as they carefully make their way across. Suddenly, another earthquake strikes. As John looks back, the first bridge suddenly collapses, sending everyone still crossing it into the chasm below. Realizing they have no time to waste, John urges Nathan and Allison to keep moving. As another survivor's bridge begins to collapse, he desperately jumps onto theirs. The impact nearly knocks Nathan into the chasm, but John grabs him just in time. John and his family quickly reach the other side. Seconds later, the remaining bridges collapse behind them. They barely make it across. John and his family continue their journey towards southern France. As they look across the barren landscape, John begins to wonder if the Clark crater might be just as lifeless. But Allison reminds him that they've come too far to give up now. Before they can continue, a gunshot suddenly echoes across the barren landscape. Moments later, an armed man approaches and demands to know who they are. After John explains who they are and tells him they're heading for the Clark crater, the man introduces himself as Dennis Laurent. Seeing how exhausted John's family is, Dennis offers to take them back to his shelter. John admits they have nothing left to trade. But Dennis tells him he doesn't want anything in return. Soon, they arrive at his shelter. John is surprised to see that the shelter still has electricity. Dennis explains that they use solar panels for electricity and air purifiers to keep the air inside clean. Dennis then introduces his wife and his daughter Camille. John soon realizes that Dennis' wife is no longer able to walk. After days of struggling to survive, John and his family finally get a chance to rest and enjoy a warm meal. During the meal, Dennis asks why they're risking everything to reach the Clark crater. John explains that they believe it could be humanity's last hope. Dennis nods and says he's heard the same rumors, but he warns them that reaching the crater won't be easy. The area around the crater has become one of the most dangerous places in Europe,
That region is too dangerous.
with different groups fighting to take control of it. Later that evening, Nathan spends some time with Camille. The two quickly become friends after Nathan shows her one of the drawings he made while living in the bunker. The following morning, before John and his family continue their journey, Dennis gives John a more up-to-date map. He explains that the area around the Clark crater is still an active war zone, but the new route should help them avoid most of the fighting. Dennis also gives John a photo and tells him to find Commander Junet, an old friend serving with the Western Alliance. According to Denise, Junet will recognize the photo and help them pass through the mountains safely. Before they leave, Dennis makes one final request. Knowing that he and his wife can no longer make the journey, he asks John to take Camille to the Clark crater.
Take Camille with you.
He hopes she'll have a chance to live a better life there. Although the request comes as a surprise, John understands how much it means to Dennis. Without hesitation, he promises to protect Camille and take her safely to the Clark crater. After saying their goodbyes, John and his family continue their journey with Camille. As John and his family continue their journey toward the Clark crater, they stop for a short break to rest. To pass the time, Nathan suggests playing a game of Would You Rather. For a brief moment, the group shares a few laughs, enjoying a rare moment of peace before continuing their journey. But the peaceful moment is suddenly interrupted by the sound of approaching engine. Moments later, several military vehicles arrive, and a group of armed soldiers quickly surrounds them. One of the soldiers begins questioning John in French. Unable to understand what he's saying, John can only stand there in silence. Seeing the confusion, Camille steps forward and explains that they're looking for Commander Junet.
On cherche le commandant Genet.
The soldier then switches to English and warns them that the road ahead is an active war zone, making it nearly impossible to reach the Clark crater. Still refusing to give up, John asks if he can help them. The soldier immediately orders another soldier to radio Commander Junet. A short time later, John and his family are escorted deeper into the war zone. The soldier explains that the only way to reach the Clark crater is through the battlefield, and that Commander Junet is stationed farther ahead. He tells everyone to stay close as they make their way through the battlefield, while explosions and gunfire erupt all around them. After reaching the last defensive position, John suddenly begins coughing again. Concerned, Allison asks if he's all right, but John insists on continuing. The soldier then explains that he can only escort them that far because he has to return to his unit. Before leaving, he tells them to head toward the forest, where Commander Junet is stationed. As they continue through the forest, John begins coughing again. Soon, they spot a military camp in the distance. Looking toward the horizon, they notice a mountain range that wasn't there before. Realizing how much the landscape has changed, John knows they're finally getting close to the Clark crater. After arriving at the military camp, John and his family head straight to the command post. John asks to speak with the officer in charge. Showing Dennis' photo, he explains that Dennis Laurent sent them to find Commander Junet, believing he could help them reach the Clark crater. The officer then leads them to Commander Junet, but to John's shock, they discover that Junet has already been killed. With Junet gone, the officer explains that there's nothing more he can do for them and tells the family to leave. Even after John desperately asks if anyone else can help, the officer orders his men to escort them out. Refusing to give up, John begs the officer to listen. He explains that they've already come too far to turn back. Then, with nothing left to hide, John reveals that he's dying and only wants to keep his promise to bring his family safely to the Clark crater. Moved by John's determination, the officer finally changes his mind. He tells the family there's a transport bus waiting just beyond the camp that will take survivors to the Clark crater. Without wasting another second, John and his family quickly board the bus. Not long after, the bus begins its journey toward the Clark crater. Everything seems to be going smoothly until a sudden explosion erupts nearby, forcing the bus to come to an immediate stop. Moments later, a group of armed insurgents suddenly attacks the bus. The soldiers immediately fight back, but they're quickly overwhelmed by the insurgents. With no one left to stop them, the attackers take control of the bus and force everyone to get off. As the passengers are forced off the bus, John quietly reminds Nathan that he promised to get him safely to the Clark crater. Just before getting off, John suddenly attacks one of the insurgents inside the bus. At the same time, the other passengers fight back against another insurgent who rushes in to help. During the struggle, a gunshot suddenly rings out. Although John manages to stop the insurgent inside the bus, he's hit by the bullet. Nathan and Allison immediately rush to John's side. Although he's badly wounded, John insists he'll be okay. Realizing more insurgents could arrive at any moment, Allison quickly gets behind the wheel and drives the bus away. As they escape, she tells Nathan to keep pressure on John's wound to slow the bleeding. After driving for a while, the bus gets stuck and can no longer move. With no other choice, John and his family continue the rest of the journey on foot, supporting John as they slowly make their way forward. At last, they reach the edge of the Clark crater. Standing before them is a breathtaking landscape unlike anything they've seen before. For the first time in years, they realize there's still a place on Earth untouched by the devastation. Overwhelmed with relief, John takes a moment to admire the view. Seeing that his family has finally made it safely to the Clark crater, he can't help but smile.
We made it.
But moments later, John's condition suddenly worsens. Weakened by the gunshot wound, he collapses to the ground. Allison and Nathan immediately rush to his side. Barely able to speak, John quietly thanks Allison for always being by his side.
Thank you.
Moments later, he passes away. Heartbroken by the loss of his father, Nathan says one final goodbye by reciting the same prayer John once said for Dr. Amina. Although John never gets the chance to see the future that awaits his family, he fulfills his promise by bringing them safely to the Clark crater. In the end, his sacrifice gives them the chance to start over with hope for a better future.